This is Greg Sorensen, and I am president of Liberty.YouTube.
And this is John Kappas, and I'm president of Mountain Water Company.
Okay, Mr. Sorensen, I had just relayed to you the text of my conversation with the spokesman for the Public Service Commission. What is your reaction to those items, sir?
Well, certainly, Liberty Utilities is surprised and disappointed by the action that the PSC took yesterday, and we're confident that at the end of the day, after all is said and done, that many of those or all of those investigations and questions will not hold up. But we understand the PSC's frustration, let's say, with the process, and we actually share that frustration.
Well, now, Mr. Sorensen, from what I understand from your comment, from your written comment, your frustration mainly stems from the city's involvement in all of this. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. I think that frustration that I empathize with the PSC on, I think is really somewhat misdirected, and that perhaps it should be focused on the city. They inserted themselves in this process, and part of the Liberty Utilities thought or philosophy is to have a good working relationship with the state commissions in where we operate. And clearly this is not the way we wanted to start things off, and this was not how the process was going. We were having a very meaningful dialogue with the commission staff and supplying information and exchanging ideas and information on Liberty Utilities so they could get to know us. But then the city interjected into the process, quite honestly, with some things that were probably not appropriate for the process as far as arguments over public versus private ownership, and that wasn't the purpose of the PSC approval process. And ultimately, when the process itself was kind of derailed by the city's actions, including having it stayed, I believe, in district court, it just led to a situation where we couldn't, from a business perspective, continue to go down that path and had to make a business decision to close the transaction when we did.
Okay, now, John, in part of your comments, you had mentioned that Mountain Water has purchased other water systems in the past without PSC review. Could you please explain that?
Yeah, that's correct. First of all, when Mountain Water Company was sold from Montana Power Company to Park Water Company in '79, there wasn't an approval process. And then further, in the early 1990s, we bought the Clark Fork Water System without approval from the PSC, and then we later bought in 1998 the Linda Vista Water System. And under all those scenarios, there was not PSC approval nor any kind of sanctions as we saw or we see the PSC trying to do today.
Okay, gentlemen, I'd like to get to your reaction to the first of all, to the potential that these entities may try to actually unravel a sale that's already been closed. How do you respond to that?
Well, obviously, there's certainly a lot of legal questions or responses involved in that answer, but I would say generally that we believe that the transaction itself has closed, and that Montana law is pretty clear with regard to the PSC's statutory authority, and it doesn't extend to stock transactions of essentially a grandparent company, which is what this is, of this nature. And so I don't believe that the current law would allow the PSC to unravel or reverse a sale simply because they didn't like how the proceedings or our actions went.
Okay, now, John, I wanted to ask you about the when Mr. Sell told me that the fines could range anywhere from $100 to $1,000 a day. What's your response to that?
Again, we're still looking at the legal aspects to that, and we'll look at why those fines may or may not be allowed to be applied to Mountain Water. The fines relate to whether or not the order was violated, and that PSC order was the order from the Carlisle transaction. We do not believe that anything was violated in that order. That order did not state that this kind of transaction could not happen without approval. again, Mountain Water Company was not sold. We are still owned by Park Water Company. And so back to the question about unraveling the ownership, we are still owned by the same company that owned us before this transaction. This transaction happened at the Western Water level. So I think the fines are tied around whether or not there was any violation in that order, and we don't believe there was.
Okay. Now, one more question, gentlemen. On April 22nd, the Supreme Court is going to hear the necessity argument here in Missoula at the Denison Theater. I would like to get both of your reactions to that and your hopes for what may happen there. Mr. Sorensen, you first, please.
No, certainly we're, I'd say, excited that the Supreme Court for Montana has chosen to take this case and to hear oral arguments. My understanding is that is not the commonplace, and that they're very selective in what they choose to hear, and in particular hear oral arguments on. So we think it's reflective of the situation and the fact that there are a lot of intricate and important issues at play here, and we thank them for doing so, and we look forward to that process.
Okay, John, how about you?
We're very confident that we have a good argument in our appeal that show that it isn't necessary for the government to take the private property of Mountain Water Company, and so we look forward to being able to provide those arguments further in front of the Montana Supreme Court.
Now, gentlemen, from what I understand, actually more than 30 years ago, this exact same scenario took place, and it was shut down before it got too far. So is this something that is a precedent, obviously, that your legal team has already looked through? Is this something that you'll probably be arguing before the court?
This definitely is that we believe the exact same case that happened in the 80s. It's the exact same party, Mountain Water Company in the city of Missoula, and so that is part of our brief and appeal to the Supreme Court.
Okay. Gentlemen, any final words for our listeners? First of all, of course, you realize we're in Missoula, but because we have the internet and we stream, these comments will be going to anyone over or all around the world who tunes into our website. Any final words from you on this entire situation? Mr. Sorensen, you first, please.
Yeah, well, thank you, Peter, for that opportunity. One, I want to make sure that we communicate that the citizens of Missoula and customers of Mountain Water are still receiving the same great service that they always have from our employees. And I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on the fact that we believe there are some fantastic people in Missoula, and our employees are equally fantastic. They have continued throughout this entire process to be dedicated and hardworking and provide a fantastic service and product to the people of Missoula, and we'd like to thank them for that.
Okay, John?
I guess I'd say, for decades we've been Mountain Water Company providing safe, reliable, affordable service to this community, and even with everything that's going on, we're committed to continuing to provide this to the water service to the community, and so our customers can rest assured that today and tomorrow, as they turn on their tap, they will continue to have employees working hard under the new Liberty ownership to see that water gets to